Have you ever tried animating a 3D character? Do you have any idea what that looks like? Do you understand what's been sacrificed for these animations to exist in games? It's a miracle, truly, because animating 3D characters is absolutely miserable. I always thought character animations were kind of an easy part of the game making process or something. Actually, to be honest, I never even really thought about them. I only ever noticed them when they're really bad looking. I was never like, how did they make Mario look like he's walking? But holy crap, I absolutely should have been like that, because I did something really bad. I started making a game, and the reason that's bad is because games have character animations, which is bad because I'm making the game, which in turn means I'm the one that has to animate the character. And I'm not like some kind of game developer or something. No, I made a couple of mods for Mario Kart, and then started making this game. So I've made a grand total of like 10 mediocre character animations in my entire life. Now I'm not totally screwed. I could be animating a 2D character, which does operate on the same principles of how stuff is supposed to look, but it's a totally different workflow. Like in 2D animation, you need to be redrawing parts of your character every single frame, but at least in 3D, your guy's just kind of sitting there. Which actually is kind of also an issue for 3D though, because in 2D, you just draw the animation from one angle, but in 3D, your animation needs to look good from every angle. And trust me, I've messed that up very badly before. Plus, in 3D, you need to come up with and make the actual model anyways. I suggest ripping off an existing Nintendo character, that's worked out really well for me so far. But you also need textures to put on the model, which you also need to make. Yeah, you can't just steal them from Mario Kart. Apparently, that's against the rules or something when you're not modding Mario Kart. Oh, and the model can glitch out super hard and do weird stuff that evades comprehension. Drawings don't usually glitch out, so that's another win for 2D animations. But I think they're both about the same difficulty level overall. It's just that 2D animations take more craftsmanship, while 3D animations require more technical knowledge. But being short on both craftsmanship and technical knowledge, I'm gonna have to use sheer patience, which I also don't have very much of. This is basically gonna suck. So here's the list of animations I need. I've already attempted them, but they turned out weird looking, so I've got to figure out how to fix them. I've separated them into two categories, actions and cycles. Actions are like a single thing you do and then it's over, while cycles are like walking, where it keeps looping forever. I feel like actions are easier, so I'll start with those and do the punch animation first. Let's just be honest. If I saw this animation in a free-to-play game, I would want a refund, and I'd probably sue for damages. So we need to do something about that. I think it's just too closed in. He's basically punching himself. It doesn't look like he has any reach or power, and his legs just don't do anything. The animation is pretty much just him rotating. Let's take some notes on where we can go from here. I think his arm should be straighter and maybe even grow a bit when it punches, and I'd like to be able to see where his hand is from behind. So let's get to work. I'll straighten his arm first, and it's already broken. I don't know why or how, but that twisted his arm all up, so I'll have to undo that. You see it now? You see how bad it already got? Even with that fixed though, the animation doesn't look much different, because there's still another keyframe of the old punch animation afterwards. So I'll just copy the keyframe that I made of his arm extended out and paste it onto that other one, which makes him hold the position for a few frames. Keyframes are kinda confusing, but they're the main way you animate a 3D character like this. 3D animations are not done frame by frame. Instead, you use keyframes. If you imagine a roller coaster being an animation, then keyframes are like those support beams. The actual track is just something that smoothly transitions between the key poses of the roller coaster, and you can change how that transition happens between the 2 points. So you're not telling the model what to do every frame, just that it should be at this pose here, and then later at this pose, and it interpolates everything in between. But that doesn't mean that that interpolation is going to look like how you want it to, so you'll frequently need to make more keyframes to get the movement more correct or add little details. Well, I think this punch animation looks better, but really lame still. I think his body should move more, so I'll rotate and slide him back on the first frame, and then rotate and slide him forward on the punch frame. This should make it look like he's actually throwing some weight into the punch. But his legs are gonna look stupid now, so I'll have to pose them in a way that complements that motion. I think it should be some kind of stepping forward. I'm gonna compare this animation to Super Mario 64 here in a minute, but I want to give it my best shot first. It took me a bit to figure out what his legs should do, but after trying out the motion a bit, I was able to figure out what would look the most natural. I also set down a cube below him as a floor reference to make sure he doesn't float or clip through the floor too badly. If he does clip through the floor kinda badly, then I don't really care, you're probably not gonna notice anyways. But you know, I don't want him halfway underground or anything crazy. One thing that I'm doing differently compared to the first version of this animation is I'm gonna have the first frame not align with the idle animation at all. Instead, it's a dramatic wind-up pose, which means the transition from idle to punch won't be smooth. Instead, it'll be a sudden violent movement, which is actually what I want for this animation. And you know what? I think it turned out decent. I don't know, I kind of think I made that pretty good. I can look at Mario 64 still and see if I missed anything, if it can get any better. I doubt it. It's probably can't get any better than this. But I mean, just spending time on this and not rushing it, just the fact that this is all I'm working on right now, definitely making this work better because I'm being more intentional about it. I'm seeing some awkwardness there on head-on. Yeah, that looks more like it would actually deal damage. If we take a look at a side-by-side, you can see how much better this animation is now. The first version looked more like some kind of gesture than a punch, but this new one is unmistakable. He's freaking murdering the crud out of whatever's in front of him. But while there was an improvement, we've still got to check this animation against Super Mario 64, the ultimate benchmark for character animation. And you'd think that's a joke, and that an N64 game would have low quality animations, or at least lower quality than usual, or at least not really impressive animations. But this game actually has good animations. Just think about that for a second. I was using 2025 Modern Blender, and it felt janky and evil most of the time. Now imagine doing that 30 years ago. It must have been the most unintuitive thing possible. Okay, if you don't click this shield icon next to your animation in Blender, it actually just deletes the animation when you close the software. Oh, and if you want to make a second animation on something in the first place, well, that's an Easter egg buried in a bunch of drop-down menus. 2025, and those are features. Now go to 1995 and just think of all the great features that you've got to deal with. You probably needed an extension just to save your work. There was probably a keybind to wipe your entire hard drive, and it was probably bound to left click by default, and they definitely went without a lot of the niceties in Blender that make this impossible process a lot easier. So the fact that Mario is walking and jumping, and pretty much everything looks completely fine, is almost unbelievable. There's no falling back on things to help you. This is pure skill and knowledge being channeled through a ton of hard work. And it was done so well that 30 years later, I can still use it as reference. Not just reference, but a benchmark. The bar for where I want my animations to be. I'm not looking for realistic motion captured animations. I'm not even looking for anything insanely detailed or expressive. Just good, solid, simple, effective animations. And comparing our new punch to Mario's punch, I think I actually did alright. Theirs is still better for sure, but my animation only needs to be passable. They don't need to be the reason you enjoy the game, but I don't want them to be distracting, or to detract from the reason that you do enjoy the game. And that's not just about them looking goofy. Let's keep animating and I'll explain. Animating a character for a video game is a completely different thing than animating one for something like a movie, because the reason you're animating that character in the first place is completely different. In an animated movie, you're usually just trying to convey a story, personality, emotion, action. But in a video game, the primary goal isn't to accurately or narratively convey something, or at least not in the type of video game I'm making. The main goal for most character animations in a video game is to offer good feedback to player input. The jump animation should feel like a jump, and it should feel like the right kind of jump based on the physics it has in-game. The punch animation should represent how much reach and power that move has mechanically in your game. Your character's animations are what tell you when you can and can't jump, when you can and can't punch, when you're crouched, all kinds of things that change what options you have. In a video game like this, the character animation primarily serves as a language to the player about the state that their character is currently in. Making the animations convey personality or emotion is something you fit in when and where you can. But the real goal is to make responsive and readable animations. Screwing up combat animations even just a little can make the whole combat feel way off, even if the hit registration and timing on the mechanical side of things is completely fine. Because most character animations are another form of user interface. Good looking UI is nice, but good feeling UI is the best. Well, it looks like the jab punch animation is all done. looks better. It's more like he's shooting his arm out and feeling the recoil. I think it's a good way to differentiate it from the basic punch, which has him leaning forward. But that really was one of the easier animations on the list. That's 2 actions down. Let's try a cycle now. And we're starting with probably the worst one. Walking. The walking animation has given me the most trouble so far. I've redone it so many times, and somehow it just keeps looking worse. Cause it turns out, walking is the most complex thing ever, and the worst part? Everyone's an expert on it. If you mess up how walking works, everybody can tell instantly, but none of them can tell you exactly why. That takes intentional studying and discerning over what exactly happens when you walk, or in my case, what happens when Mario walks. I'm trying to pay attention to what's happening. It's so fast. Maybe that's the moral of the story. You just make your walk animation as fast as possible and jittery as possible so you can't see what's happening. I really focused on the timing of when his arms and legs swing and how all of that relates to each little movement that's happening. It seems like there's the general idea of diagonal arms and legs being locked together and swinging back and forth. But then the lower legs and feet need to be doing something completely different to keep up. It's like there's 3 or 4 different things happening that all do relate to each other, but there's no easy way for me to connect them in my mind. So I'll just take it one step at a time. I wasn't able to find a good clean example of the Mario walking animation, so I got some footage of Mario walking against this grass wall and keyed out the green. Then I put an edge detect on him, which makes the motion a little bit clearer. I honestly think I was looking way too far into this animation and just hallucinating stuff. Some of you might be wondering at this point, why not just look up a tutorial or something on how to animate walking, and why I'm so dead set on using Super Mario 64 animations as reference. But it's because, unfortunately, I'm tutorial intolerant. I'm legit allergic to them. People telling me how to do stuff doesn't work, which is an unfortunate affliction when you're working on something that requires knowing a bunch of stuff that other people know. But I insist on slamming my head against the wall and doing everything the slowest and most painful way that I can find. Hence this weird walking demonstration that I made for myself to figure out how walking works based on an N64 game. But I think I cracked the code. I'm gonna start by just animating one single leg to have the right motion. If this one leg swings in a natural way, I can base all the other limbs off of it. And it would turn out I had the keyframes in the wrong spot before. There should not be a keyframe of the leg in the middle position. Just one back, one forward, and then one back again. This seems really obvious now in hindsight. And actually, yeah, no, there's no excuse, that was just stupid. Now I can make his arm have that same motion and swing in lock with the leg. And for the other limbs, I can copy those keyframes over and have them be offset so that they're inverted. But it looks like his arm is getting twisted up again. And I don't actually think there's any way for me to just untwist it. So I'm gonna have to go in and actually edit the model and the weight painting. This is a really risky thing to do when you've already made a bunch of animations that rely on the weight painting and the shape of the model to be a certain way. It's a really good way to ruin a bunch of old animations. But I should be fine with the edit that I'm making here. It's just to detach the arm from the body mesh so that it can rotate freely on the socket without twisting to do so. And yeah, this looks way better. I was getting that arm twisting on a whole bunch of animations, so this is a long-awaited fix. And for animations where it does look a little weird, I can make improvements to the arm model where I need to. Well, I think this animation looks good enough to figure out what the heck his legs are supposed to do. Looking at the Mario animation, that part just makes no sense to me. His legs generally move at the same speed as his arms, but his feet are doing something pretty complicated. And now I've actually got to figure that out. If I can get this right though, the walking should look pretty nice. This is what I've been preparing for, the crux of the first leg of my character animation journey, which I forgot to record. Okay, so guess what? I wasn't recording for like an hour. Okay, oh my gosh. Well, while you were gone, I animated his walking animation. Oh my gosh. It's working pretty good. We'll pay attention to this leg first. It comes down, it steps, and then it kicks back. And then you can see, to keep it from going through the floor too much, I actually scaled these bones on the Z-axis. So I like shrank them in like that. So his leg shrinks in and then scales back out afterwards. And then his other leg is doing the exact same thing on the other side of the cycle. Would have been cool if I recorded all of that. But there it is. Well, that sucks. But the results are pretty good. Pretty good. But still not as good as Super Mario 64. But why? Well, I noticed something pretty surprising while I was comparing them. Is it the sound? Is it just other stuff making this one feel better? Like the sound effects and the contact with the ground and the fact that it's actually pushing him around when he moves? Because when I line the sound effects up with him over there, it actually makes it look way better. It's actually pretty insane how much better the animations feel when they interact with the world in some way, or even just having sound effects. Look at the difference between the Mario walking animation completely isolated versus it in the actual game. An animation playing in the full context of a finished game will seem like it looks much better than one isolated in Blender, so comparing my animation in Blender to Mario 64 gameplay might not be entirely fair. The reason I felt like my animation wasn't done yet was because it felt like it was missing something, which it was, but it wasn't even animation related, it was everything else. Now that we have a decent walking animation, I think we're good to run through the rest of the list. I started by trying to do the jump animation. Jump. What's up with his eyes? Why does he do that? Gosh, what are these garbage keyframes? So this is a little bit broken now, with his arms doing whatever that is. No. You know what? Maybe, hold on. Do this, and then let's do Control I to invert, and then let's hide that. I kind of think this should be like a ball on the end, and that I feel like would solve a lot of issues. Like, suddenly that doesn't look bad. What's with this rotation? So, okay, the legs going down in 10 frames is not good. Needs to be a lot faster. Thing is, it looks like a vertical jump. It doesn't look like he's going forward. Well, it does look better now. It's just kind of a vertical high jump. And actually, if we compare it to the high jump move that I already have, it looks pretty much exactly the same. Except the high jump is super ugly and broken now. So I guess I'll go ahead and update this animation while we're here. Now the arms don't disconnect or anything crazy, and it looks a little more dramatic than it did before. I chiseled away at the normal jump animation a little while longer, but was really starting to get stuck. I knew I had done a few things right, but there was a lot more that wasn't clicking. So I booted up Mario 64 again and took a look at the jumping animation there, which is a really smart animation actually, because it signifies both forward and upward movement, with two of his limbs going downward and backward, while the other two are going upward and forward. But this poses a little too trademark Mario for me to just outright steal. So I went back to Blender, and slowly but surely, I accidentally made a long jump animation. First it was too vertical, now it's too horizontal. If I can just combine the two, then I should be good. I will save this animation though, because it could work pretty well if I decide to add a more forward jump. Okay, jump animation attempt number 3. This time, I'm going to keep it really simple. It's almost going to be more of a pose than an actual animation, which is kinda how Mario's is. And as crappy as this looks in Blender, it probably will look okay in game. Not good, I don't think, but the general philosophy of how I made this animation is better than the old one. Next, I'll fix the falling animation, which needs to be a lot more exaggerated, because it's pretty similar to the on-ground idle pose otherwise, which means you can't really tell if you're falling. Well, that was easy, and it was our last animation too. I can't believe it, but I actually got them updated, and I do think they all look better than they did before, even if only slightly. So we're done now, right? No, this is a video game, and these animations are not in it yet. I'm making this game in the Godot engine, which is free and open source like Blender. So I first need to get the model and its animations out of Blender by exporting it, and then I can import that file into the game engine. Then, because I don't know what I'm doing, I have to spend 10 minutes sketchily deleting and replacing stuff to get the new animations onto my character, hopefully without messing anything up. Now the animations are loaded, but you've still got to program them to your character. You want to have a system of character states based on what you're doing. You're basically making a tracker that always gives your character a label based on conditions that you use to suss out what the player's doing. So if the player is receiving input, then you must be walking. But if you, for example, add a sprint button, you need to specify that you're only walking if you have movement input and you're not holding the sprint button. If you're not on the ground and you have negative vertical velocity, you must be falling. If you have 0 or less health, then you're dead. And these states aren't just useful for animating, but also to help specify what's going on with your character for other logic in your code. Once you have this state machine built, you can use the states to drive some kind of an animation state machine or blend tree, which is where you can make the animations flow between each other correctly and have the right priorities over each other and stuff like that. I'm sure there are a few ways to code your animation into your game, but no matter what, you need to define the conditions under which each animation should play. And by the looks of how many weird little glitches there are constantly happening in my animation system, I haven't done an amazing job at that. But I'll save that for a video on bug fixing. Well, we've got all the animations made, imported, and assigned to our character. We can finally see how they look now. Yeah? Okay. Alright. I think they look pretty decent actually. I know they aren't completely amazing, but there's a very good chance that I'll keep working on these animations, or outright redo some of them again. But this was a very necessary step to take in my project. Character animation is hard, or I'm just not a character animation kind of guy or something. I find it difficult, tedious, and honestly, I just don't really like it that much. But it's not the worst thing ever, and I do like the results. So I think I can tolerate it until maybe I learn to love it, or until I earn enough to hire someone else to do it. Because the truth is, character animation is pretty understated when it comes to game development. Before, I wouldn't even really think about it when I would imagine making a game, but it's absolutely necessary that you spend some time making it look good. And depending on what kind of game you're making and how it looks and everything, that could take some serious effort. Of course, there are games with very minimal animations, but most genres and styles depend on good visual feedback from your character. And while it is one of my less favorite parts of the process of making a game, that's kinda mostly just because I've been enjoying everything else way more than I thought I would. And like I said, there is a good chance it starts to grow on me now that I'm actually focusing on it more. It could just be something that sucks really bad to do when you don't have some threshold of experience, but then it gets fun, which I guess is how most of the stuff I'm doing for my game has been. But I think it's fair to say that character animation can be pretty miserable, and shouldn't be taken for granted when it actually works well. I've really learned quite a lot just by being more observant and trying to look for any opportunity to learn something new and interesting by screwing around in Mario 64 and Blender. And now that I've got some good character animations, making the combat and movement feel good in my game is going to be so much easier. I can't say for sure what I'm going to work on next, but I definitely have a few good ideas. I'll get back to you with another video like this one when I've made some more progress on something interesting. Well anyways, I really appreciate you watching. I'll talk to you later. Thanks.